Hi everyone, I hope all of you guys are doing well. So today I will be covering how to study Indian art and culture effectively, how to study this particular subject, this particular topic in UPSC more productively in such a way that you can get the maximum out of it and you can probably get as many questions correct, especially in the prelims portion, because that's when the tricky questions come. In mains, it is much easier to tackle this particular subject because the questions are straightforward or the questions are descriptive in nature, so it is easier to write about them. But in prelims it becomes tricky because you have to pick one option, and in that the options are also such that it becomes much more harder to solve them. So I will cover the sources, how to actually read these sources, what is the sequence of reading that you should do. Then I will also talk about what to read, what exactly to read in this particular book, so that you can have the maximum you can get out of them. All right. So first of all, let's discuss the sources, and I will discuss the sources in the sequence of how you should read them. In what sequence you should be actually reading this particular sources. First of all, you should read the Ancient India book, the old Ancient India book of class 11th. This is available on Amazon also. This used to be published by NCERT. It does not get published anymore because the new history books have come. But I think this is one of the best books to read for ancient history, and also it will help you in art and culture, because without studying ancient history of India, like without studying all these various chapters that have been provided here, the history of the Harappan period, the history of the the Mauryan period, the history of the Rig Vedas, the history of Jainism and Buddhism, Magadhan Empire, then the history of various invasions that India faced, the Central Asian contacts that India came in with, then Gupta age, etc. All these histories must before you actually dive into art and culture, because with this you will get a lot of context of what you are reading. So I would say the first book you should read for art and culture, for starting your ancient history, should be this NCERT book. This is a great book. It is not very long. It is very readable. It is very nicely put together, around 300 pages, 250 pages. And all the chapters are important. I would suggest to read all the chapters. Don't skip any chapter. And chronologically also, I would say that you start from the first chapter and read till the last chapter. I don't think you need to switch chronologies. But just for the one tip I can give you is, if you skip the first 6 chapters and start with chapter 7, that is also all right. So if you start from chapter 7, then read all the chapters till chapter 29 here, and then go ahead and read 1 to 6. That is also fine. So you can read the chapter 7 to, I think, chapter number 29 first, and then you can come back to chapter 1 and go ahead and read till chapter 6. All right. So that is also a fine way to read it, because chapter 7 starts with Indus and Harappan culture, the Indus civilization, and I think that's a more relatable, that's a more understandable, more popular way to go about reading this, because even I liked it starting from here, because before that, the history before that is harder to conceptualize, harder to find context of. But the history from here, we have all come across something or the other in popular media or in our understanding of Indian history generally in newspapers, so it is easier to read. And I would say that whenever you are reading this chapter, I will also tell you how to read a chapter properly. But in this book, whenever reading these chapters, try to definitely refer to the images. And if these images are not clear, because this is a black and white print, definitely go to Google Images and try to do a lot of interlinkages, meaning try to see the images that you are reading, try to see the images of that particular text. That way your mind will get imprinted with what you are reading. Okay, so that is very important. So this is the number 1 book you should start off. The number 2 book that you should go to is in Introduction to Indian Art, part 1. This is class 11th fine arts book, and this book is a great book to read about Indian art and culture, because it gives you specific examples of developments in various fields of art and culture in India. So it will give you specific examples from the arts of the Indus Valley, modern period. So whatever history you are studying in this, it will actually give you specific examples of art from these periods. All right, in this particular book, it will also talk about murals and sculpture and specialty, that is Indian bronze sculpture. So all these are being talked here with a lot of examples. They've given a lot of pictures like this like seated Buddha, where it is. They have given a lot of examples like this of paintings of temples. They have talked about details of the temple architecture also, how it developed from like something like this to something like this, more elaborate style of Indian temple architecture. They will also give you these kind of diagrams to understand what are the different parts of the Indian temple, what are the different, how it is designed actually. This is a fantastic book, and I would say you go ahead and read this book completely from chapter 1 to its end. Not a very thick book, you can definitely get it done. The third book I would say is you should go to An Introduction to Indian Art Part 2, which is a fine arts book for class 12th. Now this is for class 11th, this is for class 12th. This one is a fine arts book, so it talks about handicrafts, it talks about paintings, which is not talked about in this book. Alright, so in this book you will be reading about the manuscript paintings, Rajasthani, Mughal school of painting. So mostly paintings and other such crafts and arts are being talked about in this particular book. And this is very important book. So this book is a little bit heavier because it goes into details of various paintings. So I would say don't make notes from this book, just read it like a story and just try to highlight the main points, the main works of arts, because if you go ahead and read this in very minute detail, it becomes a little difficult. So in this I would say just focus on various schools of paintings, like how is Rajasthani school different from Mughal school, from Deccani school. Focus on that and focus on a few key examples. Beyond that, you don't need to go into every bit and detail of this book also. All right. And here they also talk about other pieces of art, important pieces of art. So you will be going through that also. And the final book that is very, very important, I feel like, is obviously the Indian art and culture. Now, what is the specialty of this book? A lot of people prefer just reading this book instead of going through these NCERTs, which is also okay. I don't mind that. But if you are someone like me who likes to have a good base foundation built of any subject, then I would recommend you read these books. If you're not someone like that, if you can go directly into this art and culture book, that is also fine. Now that you have to decide. What I like about this book is this book has given whatever possible examples there are in art and culture of questions, of examples, of all these, various inscriptions. So it has covered everything basically, because it has covered inscriptions and edicts. This question came in UPSC last time, I think. It covers architecture. So it has divided the Indian art and culture space into its various forms: architecture, sculpture, pottery, then edicts, music, paintings, handicrafts, literature, dance form, and UNESCO's lists, languages, puppetry, etc. So it has divided it in that way, and then it has explained all those inside, and it has given a lot of examples. All right, so like this is a example of, so here you go, it will give you what is the school of painting. It will give you main examples, and it will also highlight what are the important keywords. All right, so that way this book is really good. It has given good picture also everywhere. So very lot of hard work has gone into this book. So I think that way this book is very good. But still, I would feel that if you have read these books, then it becomes much easier to remember this book and to read this book. There is no shortcut to reading this book. The only thing I would say is focus on things that are more important first and go to things that are less important last. So for example, here I will show you what to read. So in the first reading, don't focus on dates and names so much. Focus on big facts and storyline. So whenever you're reading any of these books, don't focus on the facts right away. First understand the storyline. First understand the big facts surrounding that particular reading, and then go into the details later on. And later you insert approximate date ranges into that storyline and also the personalities. See, once you have understood the story from these books, then you can go ahead and insert the important date ranges. You can never remember a date. So you can insert important date ranges into that storyline and also the personalities or examples that you want to study. So for example, let's say you are studying about Indus Valley Civilization. Arts in Indus Valley Civilization. Okay, so I have studied Indus Valley Civilization from this book. First of all, I try to understand what is the overall history of Indus Valley Civilization. Roughly, it started around 2,500 years back. I try to understand that. Roughly where it was located, I try to understand that. roughly what was the culture of this period, that you try to understand roughly, what kind of people they were economically, politically, what kind of people they were religiously, what kind of people they were trade, what kind of trade they used to do, what kind of cultural habits they had, so this overall, well, did they have male and female deities both, did they not? Try to understand from an over point of view how it relates, like if you compare Harappan civilization to in today's India civilization, how was it different from of course you don't have to factor in technology, you can minus technology, what kind of people they were overall, and that you can get an idea from the end of the book exercises also, because they ask the same questions, that describe the main occupation. So what kind of jobs they used to have, right? What kind of works they used to do, what were their main achievements in the field of technology and crafts. So what did they have, the wheel, did they use the wheel, did they use cotton to make textiles, did they make pottery? So this is the kind of different questions you can ask, all right? And this is how you understand the broad storyline. So I always tell my students who are watching the channel that always try to understand the big storyline, and later on when you go into the second reading, whether from this book or whether from Nitin Singhania, try to insert those facts into this storyline. Insert the facts of examples, personalities, date ranges. Then you will be able to remember it for a longer time, and you will also have a better understanding. Now, so what to read? In what to read? Refer to the previous year questions whenever you are trying to find out what are the important things. What are the most important things that you need to remember from these books? I did my little analysis of the previous year questions. What I found was UPSC likes to ask a lot of location based questions. From which area this particular painting comes from, or sculpture comes from, or this particular style of temple come from. Okay. Then they like to ask a lot of questions about Buddhism and Jainism. No in detail facts about Buddhism and Jainism. They also like to ask terms related to, let's say, temple architecture or dynasties. Say there is a particular term, they will ask you which dynasty is this from, which temple, or what kind of temple architecture that term is related with. So this you can do by referring to previous year questions. There are only 2 to 3 or 4 questions from art and culture that have come in last few years papers. So you can easily refer to last year's previous year questions and find the answer to a question that I'm just telling you. And of course, focus on this. You should focus on architecture, painting, sculpture, UNESCO affiliated sites. Study the region. So make a map. Maybe you can make a map of India. All right. Maybe you can make a map of India, and in that map, or you can buy it from the market. There is this printed maps that come, and you can mark there. Okay, these are the various areas these paintings are from. So, and these are the various architecture stupas in these areas. These are the various Buddhist stupas in these areas. So if you make these various maps, 10, 12 maps, covering your entire spectrum of things like paintings, manuscripts, texts, like edicts, like Ashoka's edicts, minor and major edicts. You can cover all these murals, temple architecture. If you can cover it through maps, it will also become very easy for you. So this is just few techniques I'm telling you to make your studies easier. So today I have discussed so far sources, the sequence of studying all these sources for art and culture. Now the final thing that I wanted to tell you was also how to read these particular books. The first thing is you should read the table of contents properly. So let's say I am reading this Ancient India book. First of all, the first thing I want to do is, first of all, go ahead and read the table of contents well, so that I understand what are the various things I'll be covering. Read this properly and try to understand what is the chronological way this is sorted in. Alright, the second thing is, the first reading should be just a glimpse, or just a skim, or just a broad overview. So in your mind you should be forming a storyboard. Okay, एक कहानी टाइप के आपके माइंड में डेवलप होनी चाहिए, जिसमें बड़े बड़े पॉइंट्स आपको पढ़ने हैं. स्मॉल फैक्ट्स पे आपको फोकस नहीं करना है. आपको फर्स्ट रीडिंग में बस बड़े बड़े पॉइंट्स पढ़ने हैं. बड़े बड़े पॉइंट्स कैसे कि इंडस वैली सिविलाइजेशन में ट्रेड क्या था, इकोनॉमिक्स क्या थी, कल्चर्स क्या था, रिलीजन क्या था. ये बड़े बड़े पॉइंट्स आपके माइंड में रहेंगे. फिर उसमें छोटे छोटे पॉइंट्स इवेंचुअली आपको इंसर्ट करने हैं, डिटेल्स इंसर्ट करनी है. Definitely also read the chapter end exercises or questions before reading the chapter. So before you actually read the chapter, go ahead and read the table of contents, table of exercise जो होती है, जो exercise back of the book में दे रखी होती है, उसके questions को पहले पढ़ें, and then go ahead and read the chapter. because it will tell you these things are the important things in the chapter. So you will know that these 10 things are the important things I should focus on when reading the chapter. Okay, so you should always read the chapter and exercise first before reading the chapter. When you are reading the chapter, use Wikipedia and other online sources to connect the dots. Use Google Images, use Wikipedia page or any other authorized or page which has dependable information, which is not like a news portal but more of a information portal of some university, of some published author who is reliable, to get more idea about what you are reading. So that way you will be able to connect the dots also, and you will be able to have more references. Okay, look at old PYQs from UPSC papers before you go ahead and go into second reading. Okay, now first reading you should do all these things, and then second reading में जब आपको जाओगे फिर डिटेल्स में आपको जाना है, फिर आपको as much as possible, AMAP is as much as possible ब्रेक डाउन करना है कॉन्सेप्ट को. ओके, इकोनॉमी इस टाइप की थी तो आज से कंपेयर करिए या फिर दूसरे एरा से कंपेयर करिए, तो उससे आपको आइडिया मिलेगा व्हाट वर द डिफरेंसेस. दिस इज हाउ यू एनालाइज, दिस इज हाउ यू गो बियॉन्ड just having facts and data but going into the knowledge. You should break down the concepts into smaller parts and try to understand them, compare them, and definitely don't ever make notes in the first reading. First reading में कभी भी notes नहीं बनाने चाहिए. That is a very very big recipe for disaster. Alright, so these are the things I wanted to go through today. I hope this 15-minute video will help you to not only read Indian art and culture effectively but also to read other subjects. I will make such video on every subject of UPSC, every detail, every part of UPSC syllabus in the next couple of weeks. So I hope you like this series, and let me know if you have any questions, and take care, bye bye, and see you soon.